Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fat Muscle Project podcast, a very special edition, not just because our guest is awesome and special, but it is St. Patrick's Day. So I'm going to throw this whole thing off the rails right now. Go ahead and come into the screen over here. We've got, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see what's happening right now. Leslie has joined, and apparently I have to wear this stuff today. And if anyone saw our social media posts, Gavin, who's in charge of social media now, who's about to get fired, he literally AI'd me into a leprechaun. And you can see this if you're watching on YouTube. Apparently, I'm going to be giving away a bunch of free stuff and orders today, but this is what I get roped into. So we are now hiring, and it's not for all these other positions, probably the CEO position, because I want to quit after this because Stephanie, you're trying so hard to keep this in check. Leslie, I
Green
love
looks
you.
good on you. I think it
Oh
looks good on
man.
you.
He does.
Yeah. So here we go. We are derailed. Get this stuff out of here. We've got a podcast to do.
You should leave this on.
No, I'm take this off. I can't even get it. Oh.
Okay.
Okay, so our podcast today is going to be super awesome, and we also have an announcement too with Stephanie. So I'll just go ahead and start that off right away. Lisa, we know the Fat Muscle Academy, which you've been a part of now numerous years. You've spoke at, you've been on Q&A panels. We have really always brought a great lineup, right? And I thought about this year. This is our 10-year anniversary for Fat Muscle, right? We've been in business 10 years, and this is our fifth Fat Muscle Academy. And I thought, okay, I need to have some speakers that we've not had at other events before. So I reached out to Stephanie and I was like, Stephanie, will you kind of speak at this? I was like, crossing my fingers, hope you don't have anything going on. And she definitely, she exclaimed, yes, I will be there. So, Stephanie, you are going to be on the panel. We are so excited to have you. If you would let people know a little bit more about you, and then we're going to do a huge deep dive into all things warrior fitness and you as a coach, the whole 9 yards.
Well, first of all, thank you both for having me. It is a huge honor, and obviously, just such a huge honor to be asked to be part of this academy. I've watched from the sidelines, John. I've attended so many of your events in the past, and it's very much a full circle moment because when I was just starting off, you were absolutely one of the ones that I looked to as a mentor, as an example, and so to be asked to be on this podcast and be part of the academy is just I mean, it really is so humbling. So thank you for both of these opportunities. I promise I will do you proud. I will do my best. But I'm very, very excited about that. So a little bit about me. I am from Georgia. I am a 10-year teacher. I taught both high school and college for 20 years. And when I hit 40, I had kind of a midlife crisis and thought, I want to do something else. I really wasn't sure, but I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a special needs mom. And for years, I just felt this pull that there was something else out there for me. And I didn't really know what that thing was. I just kept like waiting and kind of, watching for signs and thinking through it, what would be something that was interesting to me. And it just kind of hit me. Health and wellness has always been a huge part of my life. I was athletic growing up. I swam, I cheered, I loved to be outside. I loved the human body. I was fascinated with lifting. I really got into lifting in high school. I took a weightlifting class as my PE, and that extended through, college, really learning how the body worked. I was fascinated by looking at different athletes and how their bodies adapted to their sport. That was always so fascinating to me because I worked in the weight room at the University of Georgia where I went. And so we'd see swimmers coming in and we'd see football players and softball players. And, it just was so neat to me to watch progression and just look at human bodies. So when I decided to make this jump out of education, I really thought, what about personal training? I've had personal trainers in the past. I'm a huge gym rat. I love to take care of my body in that way. This is something that saved me in 2008. We can get to that part of my story at some later point. But I really feel like this is something that I want to do. I want to use what I know and use really what saved me in a very dark period of my life to help someone else. Because in those early years as a special needs mom and just facing a lot of personal struggle, it was the thing that saved me. It was the thing that reminded me that if I was physically strong, I could be strong to to really get through all of these difficulties. And as a special needs parent, those difficulties keep coming. They never stop. It's a huge blessing. My daughter's a huge blessing, but there were a lot of really critical moments in her life and with doctors and visits and things like that. And it was the only thing I knew. I knew if I could just keep my body strong, that would somehow keep my emotional state strong, my mental health strong. And when I got to this point where I was ready to leave teaching, I thought, I've always just prayed and asked for the help me to find the purpose in this pain. All of these difficult things I have been through, I know they can't be for naught. I can't walk around with this chip on my shoulder or feeling like I'm such a victim to life and circumstance. There's got to be some kind of purpose to all of this. Help me make this next step and let it be something that is going to be purposeful to help others through, what I've been through. And so that was when I decided I'm going to start helping other people get strong. And if God willing, this puts the right people in my path that have also dealt with other struggles, maybe this will be the thing that can save them in some small way. Maybe I can take my journey and use it in a way to help make someone else's a little more graceful, a little bit more kind, a little bit more empathetic. And that was really what drove me. So I did kind of double duty for, a couple of years. I got my personal training certification, got a bunch of different add-ons, started working in a gym, was still teaching full time, and trying to make a career out of both of those while having one child who was very heavily involved in year-round swim, my special needs child, all the pulls and responsibilities of life until it made sense to leave my teaching career. And it was so funny when I've told this story before, but when I first left teaching, I was like, that's it. I'm done. That chapter of my life is closed. I'm getting rid of all my teacher clothes. I'm getting rid of all the textbooks, all the notebooks. Like, I am no longer a teacher. And what was so interesting to me is in those early years as a coach, I struggled. I had a lot of this imposter syndrome. I was 40 years old, jumping into an
Yeah.
industry that was a lot younger than myself. And it was just the boom of social media and fitness influencers. And so I had a hard time finding my way. And it took me probably a good year and a half. And all of a sudden, I just made this connection that it was everything that made me a good educator was going to make me a good coach. And everything that
Yes.
made me a good parent and a good partner was going to make me a good coach. And it was like at that moment, everything just clicked. It all made sense that I was still a teacher. I was born to be a teacher. My sister and I would play school when we were little, so that's something just woven into the fiber of my being. It was just about making this connection that I was still going to teach. And I think at the essence, we all believe that to teaching, to coach is to teach.
Yes.
And it's just different subject matter in a different classroom. But that's the biggest driver for me as a coach, is to be able to take what I know and pass that on to someone else. And it's always my objective that I give to any of these spaces that I'm invited to, obviously leave people better than I found them, but give them everything I have. I look at every client like that. I'm going to give you everything I have because I don't want to chain you to me for the rest of your life. I want you to be able to go and do this on your own. But for that to happen, I can't just tell you to do this, follow this meal plan, follow this workout. I really have to dive into why this matters for you. And let's look at your lifestyle and look at your habits and help that bleed into what you're doing. And so here we are 10 years later. I took a leap fully away from teaching, and I'm now into my 10th year of this coaching career, and I'm blessed. I'm still a simple girl from Georgia. I love to be outdoors and, love to spend time with my family, love to travel, but at the very essence of it, I'm just a pretty simple girl from the South.
That's
Well,
awesome.
and that's what, sorry, Lisa, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm old, so I better get this out so I don't forget it. What I want our coaches listening, or people that are aspiring to maybe be a trainer or a coach. I just met with one of my clients yesterday and had a phone call with her about how to get started. And it literally is something to where when people drill down on all the stuff we're going to talk about, they're going to see real world experience of how someone built this incredible brand and business over the course of the last 10 years. And we're even going to talk about, going from, 40s to 50s and maybe even upwards into 60s, right? So this is somewhat of a blueprint. Lisa, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I
No,
didn't mean
I
to
was
cut you.
actually just going to ask how you attracted your first client and what sort of clientele you work with these days or in general.
So in the beginning, I was like any other coach. I will take everyone. And I did. I started off working in a gym and I only worked there for about a year and a half. It was a local gym and Anytime Fitness actually. And I loved it. I loved that opportunity to be able to work with such a broad spectrum of clients. I had everything from a 12-year-old boy who was obese and being bullied at school because of his weight. I worked with him. I worked with his mom, all the way up to an 85-year-old client who was post stroke and coming back and just really learning how to do functional movement, be able to sit in a chair, get up from a chair safely, and those kinds of things. So in the beginning, my client base was everyone, and I love that. I did. I think that that experience was invaluable, but it slowly morphed into I felt very limited in that gym space because I could only help people in a 30-minute session, a 60-minute session, and just in that part that was encapsulated, in those four walls. And what I very quickly understood was that was such a small part of the equation. It was everything else, right? All of the other parts of their life, from their mental and emotional state to the things that they were eating to lack of boundaries. And I just knew that there was a way that I could help people in bigger ways. And so I actually transitioned to being an online coach before COVID, before this was really a forced thing and it became something popular. So I just sort of shared my journey and I said, hey, I'm going to start this Facebook community. Anyone who wants to come along with me, let's go. And just referrals and people just kind of coming organically to that. And now, I mean, I coach me, and probably for the last 7 or 8 years, that is who finds me. I'm coaching, I'm 50, about to be 51, but I'm coaching mostly between 40 and 50-year-old women who are busy working moms, just trying to figure out how to prioritize themselves in the gamut of their incredibly full lives.
Yeah, it's super cool because I think back to 2015, which shows my age because it does not feel like 11 years ago. It's crazy. So, back in the days at First Form, we were both there. Leslie was there. Some really good times there. Met some really good people, and you're one of the people that I got to meet. And I remember it was at one of our athlete events, and I'm not really an athlete. Leslie's an athlete, but like we were kind of the early transition of coaches, right? So they started to recognize, hey, you've got social media athletes or people that have these large followings, and that's one sort of people that can bring eyeballs to the brand. Then we've got other people like John and like Stephanie and like Leslie who they've got a coaching base. Well, those people have influence and they've got people that, will trust their coaches and we can recommend products. And that was a really cool, fun time for us to meet you because there weren't a lot of us as coaches there. It was a lot of athletes and just people doing other things like Tony and like some really cool people. But we were a little different because we didn't have that large social media following. And you were also one of the people I just felt comfortable with, probably because we're close to the same age. But you've went on to help a ton of people through your brand, through theirs as one of the coaches. Talk about some of the early years of you helping people with transformations and just, some of the good times and the things that you learned, maybe that first 5 years.
Yeah, within those first 5 years, I really wanted to make sure that I had a local community presence. So it's so funny perspective. I go back and look and think, how was I doing that? I was literally doing some kind of in-person event every single weekend. I was doing a free boot camp, community walks. I was hosting, things with my girls' elementary school at the time, whether it was a fun run or some kind of, I was doing boot camps for the teachers after school. I was trying so hard just to do anything I could locally. And what was not so strange, but what started to happen was I developed a pretty strong local presence in St. Louis because of the connection with First Form. And I was so blessed with that opportunity to bring those people into my community that I never would have known otherwise. So very quickly, I started to have two big explosions of local people here in Georgia and a big population in St. Louis. And I mean, I was burning up the road, 8 hours at a rip driving back and forth to St. Louis. And I was there probably every 4 to 6 weeks, either doing events that First Form, had me out for or on my own, and just kind of rallying a local community there, which was a really great opportunity. We had so much fun. And a lot of that was driven by the 8-week transformation challenges that they were doing, right? So they were promoting that. It was something that I was doing as well, kind of on my own transformation. And I think really just bringing people along with you. I was such a young, inexperienced coach. And so it was like, okay, we're just going to figure this out together. And I'm going to watch, people like John and other coaches like Leslie and just see the kinds of things that they're doing and how they're able. I am an avid learner, so just voraciously trying to learn anything and everything, books, podcasts, listening to the TNT podcast, taking notes every single week, and just doing everything I could to educate myself. And we did. We had a great time. It was so much fun. And
Yes.
really, those people have stayed at the core of my brand. And I'm so grateful, to have poured so much into them, but just so grateful that they have been so loyal. I mean, that group of people they've been at the heart of my business since day one.
Yeah.
And most of my growth has just come organically from them with their referrals and the people that they bring in. And, it's never lost on me. There are thousands of other people that do what we do, very good at what they do, but something, there's something that has happened that we have created this community and created these relationships that people want to be part of that. And that's so important. And you've done the exact same thing with Fat Muscle. People want to be part of something bigger than themselves. They yearn for that community. And so for us to be able to provide that framework for people, I think really does help with their success.
Yeah, I want to talk about two things. Let's go back to you holding small community events. Well, maybe they weren't small. I don't know. But the thing is, you started there, and something separates people like you and other people that will go out and do that kind of stuff. And a lot of people, they absolutely will not do it. It's either awkward, they're embarrassed, they have, they don't feel like they can do it. They don't like to hold events. And that is very, very hard. I was always somebody that I would hold Body for Life events, have 4 people show up. And I was just so passionate about it. But like we start and then you show up to our events now and there's over 100 people there. But people don't see me standing on a treadmill talking to 4 people
Right.
at a gym with handouts in, 2008. Right. So your first events, what were those like? Were they pretty big? Did you have a pretty good local following or what that looked like?
I mean, in the beginning, it was embarrassingly small. And, Georgia's a pretty wide state. And so I would bounce back and forth between one side of the state and the other. I'd go back to where I taught high school and had really created some lasting relationships with those kids, who are now adults and getting married and having kids and wanting to be in shape. And so I would make the hour and a half drive over and, maybe have 10 people show up. We'd show up at the old high school track and get a workout in. And then we would do some things over here. And, honestly, it was like weekend to weekend. I never knew if anyone was even going to show up, and there were times where it was like 2 or 3 people or
Yeah.
just one. But that number never mattered to me. I was going to give them my all, whether it was one person or 100, and these events never grew into hundreds of people. It was always pretty small, but I like that because at heart, I'm a very introverted person. I obviously have classroom experience and so I can talk to just about anybody, but it is hard for me to put myself out there like that because there is always that voice in your head saying, well, what if no one shows up? Or what if this is a total flop? Or,
Yes.
whatever the case may be. But no, I mean, I would find a local park or some kind of uh, high school track and we would go put on an event. And every time I would talk about the next one and ask someone to bring a friend. And that's what was cool was next week they may show up and they've brought their kids with them. And so to be able to do something that spanned the gap of years and abilities was really meaningful. And but it is hard. There's a lot of insecurity that comes up when you're going to
Yes.
put something on like that. And what's so funny is it's come full circle. This year, I set a goal for myself in 2026 that I wanted to do an event every single month, whether it's a speaking event or something in person, but I want to do some kind of in-person event every month. And so I paired up with a local coffee shop here, and we've been running boot camps every other Saturday. And the first one, 3 of my people came because we were having an event like for Warrior
Yeah.
Fitness. It's a Galentine's. Like they came. I was like, oh, good. My girls are here. We're going to do this. The next weekend, it was a crappy, rainy Saturday. Nobody showed up, right? The third one lady showed up. So, I'm kind of back to where I was in the beginning because we all just jumped onto everything being virtual and we're just going to do it in that
Yeah.
way. And I miss that. I miss that connection with people and having that local partnership. So
Yeah.
kind of building back to square one. But I had a great boot camp last weekend when it was just this one sweet lady. She had not been to a gym in forever. She's a mom, she's a local real estate agent. And so we just went through the basics, but she's coming back for the one we're doing this Saturday. And she said she's bringing a friend. And that's how it starts, right?
And that is a huge business learning moment right here for our people listening. If you have 1, 2, 3 people show up, you said immediately the same thing I know Lisa and I are both thinking, right? Because we've talked about this on the podcast. You gave them your all. So when you over deliver for 1, 2, or 3 people and you treat them like that, guess what? they do exactly what you said. They bring a friend and that grows. And so many people, they're so worried that, oh, I only have a few people, like it's not worth my time. That one person that you go above and beyond for will tell everybody. And somewhere in there over the course of years is going to be somebody who's a massive driver of business for you. I have them all the time. People like Carrie Ferris, Renee Schneider, those people send me people left and right. Literally, I pay my bills because of those two people,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
So it's just a very important learning lesson. And one other thing I wanted to get into, Lisa, this will probably be a fun story for you because you don't know this side of it, but somewhere in an alternate universe, right? You and I would have been doing some big speaking events, right? So obviously everyone knows that I left First Form in 2019. It was 2019. Man, that's a long time now. To start my own brands and to do my own things, and that's fine. Right before that, we had kicked off, you and I and a few others, these My Transformation Starts Today in-person events. And we had one in Tampa, we had one in Texas. I believe you were at the one in Texas. Lauren Conlon was part of those, and we were starting to educate people on the transformation process and everything that was going on. And those were fun. So I happened to leave, so that kind of helped shut that down. But the other thing is, First Form was growing so freaking fast at the time. It's like they can't handle everything, right? And that was just like low on the totem pole. Totally get it and understand. But how fun would that have been if we would have maybe started that early in like 2015? That could have been something huge. You talk about some massive, massive speaking events. So I don't know if you ever think about that, but I always think, man, in an alternative universe, like you and I and a few others, like we are speaking on a large stage. That would have been fun, right?
That would have been fun, and in the beginning, there were those conversations that were happening internally, about filling big football stadiums and being able to bring tens of thousands of people together. And that was so terrifying, but so exciting to me because I just thought, wow, what an opportunity, to really do what I love, to be able to educate people on this would just be unbelievable. And to do this in such great company with, the John Gormans and Lauren Conlons of the world would have been awesome. It was a
Yeah.
great time.
Yeah.
I
It's
also
just,
wanted, sorry, I just wanted to add to Stephanie's point on terms of community, because you mentioned a few times how important that was for you to grow that community. And I think both people like John and you, yes, it is about the community, but truthfully, it's about you guys. It's about the leaders. Like, sure, people would show up if it was just Warrior Fitness and someone else would take over and so on. But they want to come and to support you because they love the connection with you. I do think that that is, yeah, something that is worth mentioning too. I think it's awesome that you say, hey, community building and people can support each other, but truly without such strong leaders and visionaries and people that you look up to in that sense, it wouldn't be anything. So yes, I think you're doing an amazing job.
Yeah, and it's so humbling to hear that and to think that. I mean, you can see that in other people, right? I could say the same thing about both of you. It's hard to see that about yourself, but it's something that I never forget, right? I always keep that close to the pocket because I do understand the depth of that. And so I always try to just go above and beyond to give people whatever that experience is for them, right? Make it great, whether it's one person at a boot camp or each fall I do a women's retreat and we've had, upwards of 35 women. We've kind of settled on 20, but we get together for a weekend and it is so much about bringing those women together. But I know that I do sit at the nucleus of that, right? And for that to be successful, I want to give to these women that come and make sure that they do have that time with me and I do get to pour into them because I know that I wouldn't be what I am without them. It leaves you feeling really exhausted if you've done it right. And that's how I always know if it's been a good event. And John, I'm sure you can
yeah.
relate to that. When you have those events and you just, by the end of it, you can hardly see straight. It's just so exhausting, but that's when you know you've done a good job by those people, right? You just give them everything that you have.
I remember exactly where I was driving down the street with Leslie, and it was the day before one of our Physique Summit events back in like, I don't know, 2018. And I just looked at her and I was so stressed out because of all the moving parts. And I said, why the fuck do I put myself through this? And then she just laughed and she goes, because you would be bored if you didn't. So, I did the event and it was fun and it was so worth it. But you're right, you're so exhausted. And then one other thing, Lisa, thank you for that, bringing up being a leader. I want our people listening. They may be early in the process. They may be Stephanie Lawler 2015. They may be John Gorman 2010. I never thought of myself as someone that would be a leader that other people would want to come to and just pick my brain on how to grow a business or how to, hey, can you answer some fat loss questions for me? If you're listening and you're just getting started, you have to look at yourself in that fashion 5, 10 years from now, right? Because if you stay with it and you become successful, you will be that person. Maybe just to your clients, maybe to other coaches, but you will be that person. So it's a good idea to look ahead and plan that way. I want to talk about, we're talking about growing a brand, in-person events. I want to talk about social media. So I have been saying this for a long time. Most of it's because I didn't have a large social media following, still don't have a large one. Yours is not gigantic. Like yours is not gigantic. I remember 10 years ago, I was telling a lot of people, quit trying to worry about how big you grow your social media and triple down on all the people that you have that are your clients and over deliver for them because that's going to be, we didn't have a pandemic at that time, but now I can say it's pandemic proof, right? You build a legion of people that you've helped over the course of years and years and years that will beat social media easily, beat the brakes off of it. Now I look back on some of the people that had large social media followings 10 years ago and they didn't build that community. They're resorting to posting skits and comedy and dancing on fucking reels. And that's fine. I don't care. It's your page, but you don't have a way to make money, right? So how important is it that you chose that over just going and trying to grow social? I think we've all tried to grow our social, right? Because we all want to have more eyes. But to me, it makes a zero difference. Mine's actually gone down. I have 14,000. I had like 16 or 17 in 2016. What's that been for you? Has that mirrored you as well?
It's been the exact same story, and when I have those moments where I get down on myself and I think, oh, if only I had a larger social media following, this would happen or that would happen. And I really always come back to John's words because they ring true and it's been foolproof. Same as you, I know lots of people connected through First Form and other coaching opportunities that have massive, massive platforms. And what's so interesting to me is I'm part of some of their Facebook communities where they have hundreds of thousands of people, and I've got 21,000 people on Instagram. I've got 1,600 people in my Facebook community. But what's so interesting to me is that you're right. That doesn't necessarily equate to opportunity. That does not necessarily equate to financial success. I I understood very quickly that social media was a way to market myself. But I also understood that it was a way that people could see a side of me that maybe you couldn't just see on my website. So I understood the importance of it, but I was also a little resistant to it because, again, I'm 50 years old. I didn't grow up with this. It
Yeah.
just wasn't a big thing for me. And so I didn't pour a ton of time and energy into it in the beginning. And, maybe to a fault, I don't know, but same as you, I really just doubled down on the people that I had, my local community, the people that I was working with one-on-one. And those are the people that I gave my energy to. Of course, we all want to have those eyes on us because we do understand that that is going to bring connection. But the purpose of social media should be for a business that, right? Making connections, starting conversations, but use it in a way that's going to be valuable to other people. And so I always thought about that in my mind. How is this going to be valuable to someone else? And my value is not going to come from singing and dancing and doing silly skits. Like that's just not who I am. I can't
Yeah.
pretend to be that way. And, I think for a little while people experiment with that and think, well, maybe I'll try that. I'll do something stupid on social media and see if it gains traction. And sadly, a lot of those things do, but that's not who I am. And that's so disingenuous that I felt like I can't do that. So I'm just going to keep showing up on social media. I'm going to educate because that's really what I know to do. And the right people will find me and the right people will find this as valuable. And so I've just always really tried to stay in my lane and put the blinders on because it's so easy to watch people that I started with and their platforms are 4 or 5 times larger than mine because they've just seen this constant growth. But I wasn't willing to do some of those sorts of things or be untrue to who I am in a way that would present on social media. And, it was always my biggest horror that someone would meet me in person and be like, oh, wow, you're really different than you are in social media, whether they meant that like physically, or whatever. I'm like never using a filter. I don't know how to even do any of those kinds of things. I joke when John was here, like I would rather show up on social media just looking like absolute hot garbage. So when someone actually sees me put together, like, oh, wow,
Yeah.
you look okay, but I just, because we've all had those experiences. I can't tell you how many events I've been to and I've met people that I have just put on a pedestal on social media and they were nothing like they appeared. And I never ever wanted that to be someone's experience
Yeah.
with me, you know?
Yeah. I saw something cool the other day. Lisa, if we think about like when you spoke at Fat Muscle Academy, we had like 80 to 100 people there, right? The year before, I think we had like 60, right? Because and we maxed that room out. So we all took a picture in front of like 60 people, right? All the speakers in front of 60 people. And I saw this picture the other day and it showed a person in front of, I think it was 30 or 40 people. And you could tell there was a bunch of people around this person. And it was like, next time you worry about getting only 30 likes, this is what 30 likes look like. And it's 30 freaking people. Tell me you wouldn't want 30 people in the room who liked what you were talking about right now. So there's such a mind fuck to social media. Even on my end, I went and met the owner of Bum and Raw Energy, Dom Iacavone. And this guy's doing like massive, they're like first form size, right? Like that's massive. And it makes me feel like I'm inadequate if I'm not careful. And I'm sitting here thinking, I've got 5 companies. I'm about to buy into number 6 in April, which we can't talk about, but I'm going to announce that soon. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Like, why do I feel like I'm a loser, right? And so perception is reality sometimes, so we have to be careful. So I just figured we'd speak on the social side of things because you've done a really good job of building a brand, and it's social's been the tiny part of it that social is. But to me, it will always outlast everything when I see a lot of people's platforms kind of crumbling. So, Lisa, do you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that that is really a great message for the people out there in the sense of just put your attention to educating to the clients that you do have and don't worry about the numbers because you can always work more, do more, have more followers, blah, blah, blah. If you start playing that game, you're going to lose in the long run, that's for sure, burnout and whatever.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to me too to track back where my clients are coming from. And they found me some way somehow in the beginning, but a lot of times it's not through social media. It's through referrals. So
Mm.
that just proves your point, John, that it's about doubling down on the people that you do have and really pouring into them. When I have events, it's the people that I know or that someone has brought to me that show up. And so we put all of this weight into social media, and then that's going to be the game changer. But I know plenty enough people who have huge followings and they don't have great coaching businesses. It doesn't really necessarily translate one to the other.
Yeah, yeah, I see it all the time. Let's talk about because and I know because Gavin and I stayed at your house and I've known you over the years, but you've got a very successful coaching business, right? We don't have to talk about numbers or anything like that, but very successful, especially in today's climate. Like what you have, people would kill to grow. So I know you're a very, very busy person with coaching. You do live Zooms. I think it's not Zoom, Facebook Lives in your group. It's every Wednesday night, if I remember right. I was fortunate enough to jump in on there. People love that. You're very, very busy. I think one of the best things that you can bring to the table, and I told Jessica to add this to the show notes last second, is your ability to be organized. I know so many coaches that can't reply to an email on time, let alone keep themselves organized, especially if they want to start doing things outside of coaching, right? What makes you successful, and what are some of these things that you can pass on to other people as far as like keeping everything organized? Because to me, that's a huge part of retention is being organized for your clients and just in your business.
This is probably the biggest piece that I coach other coaches on. That's a part of my business as well. And so when they come to me, we do a big audit of how are you actually spending your time? And I think that for me, this is an acquired skill. And of course, people always say, well, you're just so organized, but it's a skill that can be learned and one that can be improved on. I think inherently I do tend to be more type A and, I like things in a particular way and done in a certain fashion, but it's a skill that can be learned. And I think one of the biggest blessings I had in the beginning, and this will hopefully reach a lot of coaches who are just beginning, is I was doing double duty. I was working full time and I had all of these responsibilities as a wife and mom, and I was trying to start a coaching business. So it wasn't just about putting all of these hours into something and burning the candle at both ends. I certainly did, and I put in my time in the beginning, but a lot of that was just about really being able to manage my time well and being organized. So, some of the things that I do and I coach other coaches to do is I really had to evaluate, okay, when I said I was teaching and I was at work at that job from 7:30 in the morning until 3:30 or 4 in the afternoon, what was I really doing during those hours? I taught college, so we had, hour and 15-minute time blocks where I was standing in front of a classroom. And then I had things like office hours, or I was, grading papers or whatever the case was. But I wasn't actually nose to computer working from 7:30 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. There were lots of pockets of time where I was just bullshitting, right? Run up to the convenience store, go grab an energy drink, go walk around the parking lot, whatever. And so I got really good at using those little pockets of time well.
Yeah.
So when I left work at 4 o'clock, I was done. I had everything done. I was not carrying work home with me, taking care of things with my family, and then spending those evening hours really starting to build my coaching business. So I think one of the best things a young coach can do, or someone who's, trying to work two jobs, transitioning into coaching, is you have to really look at where your time is going. And you have to be honest, just like we would ask our clients to audit what they consume in a day, like track your food, what are you actually eating? We have to be able to do that same thing with our time. I'm a big advocate of pen to paper. I know everything is electronic now and everyone has Google Calendars and all this stuff, but I'm a big pen to paper girl. So one of the things I do every single Sunday is I sit down, I look at this is how old school, like I
Let's
literally
let's
have
let's
my,
let's throw them up because I'm just
I,
waiting for you to do that so I
yeah.
can. Oh,
See,
look, all three of
like
us.
a
Look at
track's
this right here.
light. Yeah,
That's
I've got my
awesome.
monthly
Yeah.
planner, and then just like John, I've got my daily notebook. So that's one of the things that I have done for a decade now. On Sundays, I sit down and I look at my appointments, I look at my kids' calendars, I look at everything going on and get it all organized. So I really try to work on a 4-day work week. This was especially important when my kids were in school. I knew that because I work from home, there's tons of distractions. So the first thing I did was eliminate all the distractions. I work in the basement. I only go upstairs if I need to get something to eat. Everything else I stay down here, especially during those focus hours that were my school hours, and just didn't allow myself to be distracted by everything else. I would not allow myself to go upstairs, get something to eat. And while I was there, let me throw a load of laundry in. Like I just had to put the blinders on and just
Yeah.
stay in that work mode. The other thing that I coach a lot of coaches on is we're constantly being distracted and our level of attention, our time for attention is so short. I do not have my laptop synced up with my phone. I do not wear an Apple Watch. I have all of those notifications turned off. So when I'm working through these pockets of time in my day, that's what I'm actually doing. I'm not stopping and checking my phone a million times, or I see a text come up on my laptop and now I'm dealing with that. I'm very big into time blocking. And so I not only time block within my day, but I also day block where I do similar tasks together in a day. So for me, I don't do any client calls on Mondays or Fridays. Those are sort of my days that I really just put my head down and go. Um, so on Mondays, I do a lot of content creation, whether that's social media, or writing my weekly newsletter, or doing things for my Facebook community, post there. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are big client check-in days and client call days. So I know that that's going to be, gaps of time that I'm going to have to jump back and forth. So I try to put tasks in there that are a little less brain powered and really try to compact my week into a Monday through Thursday work week so that on Fridays, I do some coaching calls with other coaches, some mentorship calls, and really allow myself to use Fridays as the future projects. And I think that's one of the things that's really helped me is we always have this master list in our minds of like the things that we want to do. I want to build this course or I want to create this service or, whatever the case may be. But when do we work on those kinds of things? We're so busy in our daily lives. So really being focused and push my work week down Monday through Thursday and then having that discipline on Fridays that even though I've got those two calls and those are the two things that are really written in, having a full schedule of things to work on that will move my business forward, right? So this is the time where I start to plan my event that is coming up in October. I'll start to plan my presentation for you guys in July so that those things don't creep up. And, another great time management tip that I always work on too is if I get through my list and today is done and I've checked everything off and that feels really good, but I look at the clock and I still have another hour and a half of work time before school is over, whatever the next thing is, I go ahead and flip to the calendar for what could I work on for the next day. Because
Yeah.
especially as busy working moms, as someone who owns multiple businesses, there's always going to be something unexpected. There always is going to be some fire that you have to put out. And I
Yeah.
used to let those things just throw my whole day because I never was at a place where I was working well enough ahead or had any kind of schedule or organization, whether it was for client retention or focusing specifically on acquisition. I never had those things built in. It was just hit them all as they came. And it takes a little bit of time to get ahead of that. So now, if, middle of the afternoon, my oldest says, "Hey, mom, do you want to go grab a cup of coffee with me?" Or I'm going to go to the gym and work out. I'm at a place now that I can do that. and my, entire day isn't going to fall apart because of that. And that's a real blessing to finally be enough ahead of that with how organized and disciplined that I've been, to allow that opportunity.
Yeah, and it's something, early on in my coaching career, say, 2010, 11, 12, I was able to just not be very organized. I just had a bunch of online clients and I literally just checked my email nonstop, but I didn't really stay organized. It wasn't until probably 2015, honestly, when I started the TNT podcast and was driving to First Form all the time. We started, events and all these different things, teaching myself to be organized and keeping track of everything in a notebook. And that prepares you for so much stuff in the future that you don't even know is possibly there. So I think that's massively important. And then finally, I just see the success DNA in you, because if people think that being an online coach isn't a lot of work, you literally just made me tired talking about all the things you do, because you schedule them, but you do the things that need to be done even when you don't feel like it. And I think a lot of people think, oh, online coaching, that's super, super simple. Well, at a low level, it is. But if you want to be successful, you need these tactics that Stephanie's talking about here. I want to pivot just a little bit because we've got about 15 minutes left, and I don't
And
want us to
I
run
just
long.
wanted
Yeah, yeah. Go
to
ahead.
double down on something that you said, Stephanie, and that was the working undistracted, because task switching is something that's really shown, like with science, shown to waste so much time. And then also when we are in a certain task and we're halfway in another one and back and forth, the quality of our work is going to be so much lower. So by not having those notifications on, by not going between Instagram, email, content creation, whatever else, like in three circles, you're honestly going to speed up your work and enhance the work quality so much. So anybody listening, that would be the point that I would like underline and highlight here.
And I think some of that too goes with looking at the time that you have and being able to put your best foot forward within that block of time. Like we don't always have the perfect day. And the other part of that is sort of knowing where you operate best. Probably like John would admit, I'm not a great morning person. So those first tasks that I write for myself in the mornings are not one that require a lot of brain power. It's things that I can easily check off, get through, get the momentum going, and then kind of operate best when I work best. To your point, you could be working on a task that takes you 3 hours, but if you had done that in the right time without distraction or where you're working best, you can get that thing done in an hour and create such a better product than if you were struggling through it. That's a great point.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about, I think something that's very important. So at the Fat Muscle Academy, we are going to have our nurse practitioner, Jordan, who everyone was familiar with last year, who's on the Q&A panel. She's been on the show, literally the best MP that I know, hands down. I'm not just saying that because she's part of Premier U Telemed, but she's awesome. She's going to speak on reading labs, and she's also going to speak a little bit on menopause, right? How important has that been to you, going from 40 to 50, to understanding those processes? And I know we could do a whole podcast on this because you're very well versed in hormones and all the things. But for you specifically, and as for the other ladies out there listening, they're going to be where you were 10 years ago. How important has menopause been to your business, the last 5 to 10 years?
It's something that I wish I would have it's something I wish that I would have taken a better opportunity to learn more about 10 years ago.
Same. Yeah.
I look back now at some of the women that I was working with when I was 40 and they were 50. And these were the cases that made me so frustrated. I could not get them success no matter what I did, right? With the limited knowledge base that I had at that time, I was doing everything by the book. I'm referencing John's books. Like, what is going on? This is not working. And whether it was a motivation piece and I just couldn't seem to get them engaged, or they were supposedly doing all the right things and the scale wasn't moving, their body composition wasn't changing, they were so damn tired all the time, like a lot of uneducated coaches, I just thought they weren't working hard enough, or I thought it was me, and having a lot of those feelings of inadequacy because I couldn't get them the results that they said that they wanted, right? And it wasn't really until I started going through this that the flip just switched and I realized, wow, this is such an impactful part of a woman's life. I mean, you're probably, God willing, going to spend more years post fertile than when you're in your fertile years. So this is something that we are going to have to understand for women's health and for their longevity. And there's so little research. I mean, we know this now, so little research, especially about women who are fit and who are active, and looking at these transitional years and what those hormones do for them. And again, I was, I thought I knew enough. I was okay. I can kind of read my own labs. I get it. This is something I'm somewhat familiar with. And then all of a sudden, 2 years ago, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And looking back now, it was happening slowly over time, but I really didn't see it until it got to the point where I could barely get myself to the gym, carrying, now 7, 8 extra pounds that no matter what I seem to do, I can't shake. I'm doing all the right things. I'm not cutting corners, but this just isn't working. The desire is gone, the motivation is gone. And when you're in this industry and this is supposedly what you love and have passion for, and you are struggling to pull your own ass to the gym every day and get in a good workout or really give two shits about what you eat, that's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
those were the days where I was like, I just need to hang it up and go open a coffee shop or something because how can I lead anyone if I'm struggling so badly with this? And really wasn't able to make those connections. I thought it was just me. I thought I was in a professional slump, whatever. And finally, as I had sent so many women, go have labs done, go have labs done, finally started going down that route with myself and seeing that my testosterone was a 6. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this all makes sense now why I'm so tired and why I don't really care about anything that I used to care about. I explained it to you. It's just like this dimmer switch with everything in life. Things that used to bring me joy and happiness, things that I was excited about and passionate about, just felt black and white. It just kind of felt like it lost the color and lost the spark. And so when you are coaching women who are experiencing that, if you don't have any understanding of it, it is very quick to start making generalizations that they're not working hard enough. Or, like I said, then you start questioning yourself and you're doing something wrong. You can't get these people results, these women results. So if I were a young coach, this is a place that I would really double down and I would learn from. There's so much out there now that we can take for free, whether it's social media accounts or podcasts or books. There's so many pioneers that are doing such great work. Dr. Bill Campbell, we can look at Dr. Kelly Casperson, Mary Claire Haver, all these women who are dedicating so much time and energy into putting this information out there so that we have a better understanding of this. And, selfishly, at some point as a woman, this is going to impact you. So even if you're not there yourself yet, at some point you are going to be. And just to be able to have a full understanding of this is so vital.
Yeah, I think, well, someone sitting here on the podcast with us is Lisa. Lisa, I think you are so ahead of the curve because you understand this already at a high level and you're in your 30s. And I know, like, as time goes on, as we all get older, we attract people that are our age, right? You're already in your 30s and able to solve a lot of these problems. You have such a high level understanding. I can't wait to see in 10 years like what all of your business and things like just simply from that fact alone. So
Yeah, I
I
really
think
feel
our
very
people,
privileged also having made so many great connections. Like you mentioned, Stephanie, for example, with Bill Campbell, thanks to you, John, and hearing him speak at the Academy last year, or just in general with all the research that's coming out now. I mean, 10 years ago, that, like you said, wasn't available. It's only kind of like become of public interest now. It's been
yeah,
acknowledging like, okay, this really is something that we need to talk about. It's not just boom menopause and that's it, and it's not just in women's heads. It really is a transition, and there is really scientific proof for that. We just need to get it, and we need to get to the bottom of it. So yes, I very much feel privileged.
I think that it's something, back in 2019, 2020, we all started talking more about reading labs and understanding blood work. And to me, it was still kind of new, but we were all in the kind of that early wave. And now, like, everybody knows how to do that. I feel like with menopause, understanding all the labs, understanding different medications, understanding the phases. It's literally the most complex topic I think that anyone can learn. And you need to get in early now because what happens is Gary Vee used to say 10 years ago, people ruin everything. So in 5 years, everyone's going to be a fucking menopause expert and they're not experts. And it's going to be rampant everywhere. So get in now and learn and understand. Lisa, you're laughing at me. I know because I'm so raw and uncut, but
It's so
I
true,
just
though.
think it,
The amount of people
yeah.
that I can think of just at the top of my mind who call themselves a menopause expert would, without like any certification, or not that you need a certification, but without any real proof, is
Yeah.
quite ridiculous, actually, already.
Yeah. Stephanie, I want to talk about now that you are 50, you just do not seem in your 50s at all to me. You're still in your 40s. What's the biggest lesson that you learned in your 40s from a business standpoint, from the coaching standpoint, or just personally that you want to pass on to the listeners?
I think this probably applies to both personally and professionally, but there was the 40s were just an awesome decade because
Yes.
I think you all of a sudden have this perspective that God willing, you're halfway through this life and the first 40 years have flown by, right? And so you are on the backside of this, not in I'm fearing death or doomsday kind of thought, but it's just all of those things that seem so important to you in your earlier years, you realize they do not fucking matter.
Yep.
And so there is something so liberating about being in that stage of life where you can let the things go. I mean, I used to just lose my mind over the smallest things, whether it was the kids put something away in the wrong place, or God forbid we went to bed with a sink full of dishes. Like that would have driven me mad, right? And now it's like, it doesn't fucking matter. And it's the same thing in your business. The things that I would get so wrapped around the axle about, get so upset, whether it was, an affiliation with a partnership or a client, whatever, just like lose my mind over it, take things so personally. You just learn to let those things go. You prioritize what really matters. And I think in your 40s, you start to understand the priorities in a much different way than you ever could have in your 20s or 30s. Just don't have that life experience yet, and that's okay. But I think to be at that stage where you can let go of some of the things that you have carried with you and, trying to please everyone and realize that it doesn't matter. The right people will be attracted to you, and just gaining that self-confidence, especially as a woman, to stand in your own shoes and feel good about who and what you are, and know that the things that you're doing are leaving a legacy for your family or for, future generations. Like those are the things that really matter. And you start to see your circle go from being all of these friends and all of these groups and all these acquaintances to just really just narrowing down, but it's so quality, right? The quality of these different parts of your life, you really have just guidance and direction and wisdom about you that you didn't have. And so I think there's a difference that happens when you hit that stage. And I think my biggest piece of advice is if you can somehow get ahead of that and learn early to let go of those things that really don't matter, that really are not going to move the needle forward. It's not about lowering your standards of anything. It's about raising your standards and holding yourself to that and keeping your circle small and protecting your boundaries. I look back now and in my 20s and 30s, I always wanted to be the team player, the people pleaser, right? All of those taglines that make us feel like we're contributing in some way. And
Yeah.
I read a book one time and it said something about, you call yourself a people pleaser, but really you just have shitty boundaries. And
Mhm.
that like resonated with me so strongly because I thought, wow, it's true. It's not about pleasing people. It's not about being available all the time to everyone because you're a doormat. And I was that in the beginning of my career. And I kind of became that again at the beginning of this new career in coaching because you just want to be accessible to people all the time. And I
Yeah.
think social media is really damaging in that way because you feel like you owe someone that, right? You owe them this glimpse into your life. And I try very, very hard to keep my private life private. I don't show my husband on social media. I don't show my kids a whole lot on social media. They're certainly a part of my life and who I am. And I think there's a time and place for it, but I don't owe anyone anything in that way.
Yeah.
And, I think if you can, like I said, kind of get ahead of that before you get to your 40s and realize that good boundaries are so important and it's so key for your own health and for the growth of your business.
Yeah, I think it's something too is if I would have listened if I were 40 listening to you right now, I still don't know if that would stick in my head. It's almost like you have to go through it and experience it for it to stick. Even though we hear it, at least for me, I'm just a slow learner, I guess. But I'm with you 100%. And let's talk about what's next for you and Warrior Fitness, on into your 50s, or do you have anything, that's coming up? But what's next for you?
So what is next for me is probably in the next couple of years, we have bought a big chunk of land and we're going to like move out onto the homestead and build the dream house and have the farm and raise some animals and get my hands dirty every day. And on the personal side, I'm really excited about that. Having young adult children is a really great place to be where they're creating their own lives. And although we will never be empty nesters because of our youngest, there are, new and exciting chapters that are waiting there. And I'm really excited about that. For my business, John and I, we talked about this. I think that there is a shelf life as a coach.
Yeah.
And I think if you always have that in the back of your mind, it will drive you in really great ways. Don't let it, don't let it lead you feeling, like it's the end of it, but that there are only so many years that this is going to be relevant to other people, right? Not that there isn't a need for people in their 60s to be coached by someone in their 60s. I think, especially as we get into longevity and, longevity medicine and that kind of thing, this is going to be something that for a vast number of people will be really important. And we have a lot of opportunity in that way. But, I also don't know that I want to be doing that forever. So, some of the things that I want for my own business is I want to start, bringing in some coaches that will be able to continue this, and I'll be able to do this from maybe a little more of a backseat perspective, and coaching other coaches as they come up through this business is something I'm really interested in. I think everyone wants to be the mentor and they want to be a coach to other people, but they don't have any experience. They don't have any proven track record. And I don't know that I even yet feel in a place where I could be valuable to someone in that way, but that would be something I would like to get into. I do that a little bit, but I would like to continue to do that. I've got some books that have been circulating in this brain of mine for quite some time that I would like to write, and just John and I have talked about some other ways to grow my business that will be sustainable. When, I don't have to have my hands so deep into the thick of all this anymore. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
it's something to where I think you're the perfect example, because I talk about me all the time, but you're the perfect example of when you build something over the course of 10 years. And a lot of people want to try and build it like that. Like they're 2 years in and they're impatient. I'm like, no, listen, 10 years is freaking awesome. Wait till you get to 15 to 20, right? And it's like you've built this community of people that you've helped so much over the last 10 years and done right by, that it leads to other doors opening. Like if you want to buy a book, those people are going to come support your book. If you want to hold events, if you want to bring other coaches on, you could literally do anything at this point. And it all ties back to your coaching business. So really the sky is the limit for you. That some people open gyms, or there's all different things, right? So like you've done a good job of setting yourself up. And I don't think a lot of coaches are looking at things that way. They're looking at today, and that's fine, but they're not looking long term. And I think you're 100% right. For any coach in their 50s, once you get close to 60, you're going to run out of people that are interested in training. You're not the same. You don't have the same client base as you did in your 40s, right? It's just so people need to start thinking ahead. So I'm
I
really
think
excited to
not
see
just
whatever you
that. I
do.
think
I'm
also, yeah, I think also you yourself need to be excited about what you're doing. And I mean, not to say that you're losing excitement about
yeah,
what you're doing, but sometimes like opening a new chapter, that's how I look at it. Your book might be the book of teaching, which is what you started saying at the very beginning of this podcast. And it has many chapters. At first, it was a chapter of high school or wherever you were co teaching. Now it's this, and then it might be your mentoring and so on. And I think that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur as well.
Yes. Yeah, you get to chart your own destiny, and that's a really cool thing, but it's always so interesting that life makes so much sense when you look at it in reverse. It's the dots are so connected, and I could tell a million stories about that, So I just would encourage anyone who's starting this just to always do your best by people, be a good human being. Mike and I talk about this every single Friday when we do a coaching call. That's really the name of the game. Treat people right. Like just give a shit about people. And when they know that and they truly believe that, you're never going to have to worry about the financial side of things. The opportunities will continue to come if you just do right by people. And, unfortunately, this can be such a gross space. And that's why, because people are not being honest. They're not really trying to do right by a person. They're just trying to make a buck. And I think we all work against that because we are people with morals and values and good ethics, and we want to do the best we can by others. And, I think if you just look at it one person at a time and just give them an experience that they cannot duplicate on their own, right? And pour into them just like you would your best friend. And that's something I always try to think about from the first opportunity I have with someone, whether it's a message back and forth on social media. What would this person say about me 10 years from now? You know, what would they say about the
Mm,
first
absolutely.
opportunity they had or the first encounter they had with me? And I would be mortified for someone 10 years from now to be like, man, you were a real bitch the first time I sent you a message on social media, you know? And so if you can kind of look at every single encounter in that way, I think it'll take care of itself, you know? And wherever your
And it
business will
comes
go.
back, it comes back around. I literally, real quick, one quick story, and we'll close this out. I literally had someone order protein the other day who was one of my first clients ever in 2007. Her name's Jen. And it's so crazy we're talking about this. Yesterday, she ordered a bunch of single serves. I threw a free shaker in for her and some other stuff and we all wrote thank you on there. Leslie wrote literally 2007. So that's 19 years ago. Holy crap. I have not worked with her since, before 2010. And she just kept up on Facebook and things like that. And I just treated her and her husband good and, didn't stay in contact or anything. But, you just see social here and there, but literally no messages or anything. And she messaged me. She needed some protein. She placed an order. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about, everybody. Like you never know when people will come back. She might buy stuff for the next 5 years. Maybe she needs a diet. It doesn't matter. Like you treat people good, it comes back around. Stephanie, all of your information is in our show notes. I want all of our listeners you can hit pause, go find Stephanie, follow her. She's always putting out really good stuff, but she's just a quality human. So definitely go follow her. All of her contact information is there. And if you want to hit myself or Lisa up, you have ideas for guests, questions, any of that stuff, all of our contact information is there. And then finally, we don't ask this enough. We haven't gotten a review in a long time. We don't even try and push that, but we've got like 50 some odd 5-star reviews. Just hit pause, leave us a review if you don't mind. It just helps get the show out to more people and elevate it. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on. We're excited to have you out here in July to speak at the Fat Muscle Academy. We'll keep everybody posted. We'll make the announcements with all the speakers soon. So, for myself, Stephanie, and Lisa, we're out of here. See you guys.